long drawn out, subdued,
Gotcha. So a tolerable snore.
calmer snore.
It
Yeah.
was tolerable.
If I was awake,
I didn't
I
keep
was
you up.
awake after you woke me up, but yeah.
Philosophically speaking, I feel as though we have transcended what modern man has tried to build up all these years. We're going back in time. Living like a caveman in a tent next to a fire is just one of the most wonderful experiences you could ever have. And anybody out there has a chance to do this, I would suggest it. It's very enlightening. I think you'd really enjoy it.
I could talk all day about bicycle touring, its related mechanics, or what to pack, but that's not what this is about. This is a cultivated story that formed over an 8-year period about how we built a family of people just like you across the United States. We all have families, work full-time jobs, and make little time for ourselves. When we do, we enjoy bicycle touring.
I'm Bob Neubauer.
My name is Fred Theobald.
My name's Rich Tustin.
My name is Stephen Allen Smith.
My name is Meredith Sheeran.
I'm Christine Sennett.
Hi, I'm Tom Rank, and I am a fully loaded bicycle tourer. Every individual on the trip had their own little quirkiness to them.
So on a bike ride, I discovered Old Town Alexandria, this adorable, historic little community that definitely is supportive of those who like the outdoors, being only 4 blocks from a bike trail that takes you all the way to Ohio, by the way.
How you feeling?
Tired?
Tired?
Hurting?
Hurting? Having fun yet?
No?
Don't go in blind like I did. And, yeah. Don't do it so much in cold weather either for your first trip. Of course, we weren't anticipating a 6 to 8 inch snowstorm, a couple days before our trip. So, it's better to do it later on in spring and not the first couple of days.
Why don't I just do the East Coast? I could ride down from where I live near Philadelphia all the way down to Florida to visit my friend down near Fort Lauderdale. And then I thought if that worked out, maybe I'd finish off the coast by going up to Maine and coming back. So kind of a 2-part trip.
How you doing, man? Doing good. What's up, man? Would you like some beer? Yes. I'll take care of this for you. What are you doing?
Building my camp for tonight. You'll love this.
It's gonna get wet.
What's he doing? Tell me what we're doing.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
All right. 27 years old.
I get my pacemaker redone in 2 weeks, so let's hope I make this trip. If I don't, my lawyer's coming after you.
By the way, did you sign a waiver?
So what really brought me into biking, I've been biking since I was a kid. And for me, cycling might be a little bit different than what it is for other people. I always saw cycling as a way to get someplace else. As I got older, when I went away to college, Penn State, boy, that was a whole new world for me. All these new roads that I'd never been on, and I would just ride for miles and miles around through the countryside. And that's always how I looked at cycling, as a way to explore. It was never about exercise for me. And if I get some exercise out of cycling, that's just a plus.
We're at the Bagel Gourmet. Sorry for my hair. In New Gretna. This is our second stop here, actually. We looped back, unloaded after camping in probably 28-degree weather over the evening. And I gotta tell you, we still had a good time. As cold as we were. Had great firewood and people dropping by to help us.
My first touring trip, I didn't know what to expect. I just knew I had to have a tent and a sleeping bag and clothes and food. And there's actually video of me with my bike on the first trip. I'm like, how in the world am I supposed to ride this bike? Because I've never been off the street, never had stuff on the back of my bike. And it was quite an adventure. The anticipation of not knowing what to expect, not knowing what the weather was going to be like, but it was exciting.
We should have free Wi-Fi out here in the park.
Chewing up your data plan, are you? Out here in the middle of nowhere?
We're gonna get a group picture and then we're gonna head out. We're waiting for Meredith. So now she gets to be the first one I wake up every morning.
The last one ready is the first one to be woken.
That's right.
Meredith, AKA victim. Okay.
When you enjoy something as much as we love touring, you have this natural motivation to get others involved, even if they've never done it before.
How you liking your first tour?
God damn it. I should have trained.
Trained for what? This is your training.
Fuck out of training. I should have been in the gym like one of them drones.
Yeah, no. Better to carry the weight on the bike, I think.
Oh, God almighty.
Calories on this thing.
Yeah. I think so. I think I
He dropped calories the first 5 miles. I'll see what he vomited.
See some on my shoe.
Yeah, how do you say vomit in Spanish?
No idea. I'm not telling
You lie.
And for those new riders that we bring along, we always try to explain the schedule. This really does help them understand that we're certainly not in any hurry and can take every daylight hour to enjoy the sights and sounds along the way.
I would rather see the leg than the stomach.
That's true. Leg will go away.
Can't even speak straight. This freaking guy over here got me so tired out. But good times.
But you got a little sick today, yes?
More like I just couldn't keep nothing down, so it stunk.
Sometimes you have to admit defeat. You did pretty good in my eyes. If I was throwing up for 35 miles, forget it, I would have went home.
If we only have 30 miles on the day's schedule, we can take all day to do those 30 miles. And that leaves plenty of time for extra activities. We'll stop frequently to talk, eat, make an adjustment, and so forth.
It was cold. We went in November. And from there, we kind of took off with it and went from 3 people to the next trip I think we went on had 10 people and so on and so forth. And they got bigger each time to now we've got a whole little community of touring cyclist buddies.
Most people think that bicycle touring involves a rather high level of fitness and endurance. That's where the initial hesitation is.
I had no idea if I was actually going to make 30 miles a day with all the gear. We had to go out and buy myself a huge trailer that when I got there, people were like, that is literally the biggest bike trailer I've ever seen. And they were all so excited, and I couldn't figure that out until we actually went to get beer.
Because he's got the trailer and can carry all the beer.
What they fail to realize is that most of us are not frequent riders, nor are we athletes. In fact, we're probably more the opposite.
Pokey. So, well, Meredith has good reason to be called Pokey, or good reason to be Pokey. She's the woman that has every tchotchke, every possible accoutrement one could need for bike packing, but she's always so slow.
But no, the interesting thing about it is, like, after the first day of doing it, it just felt right. I mean, we got to the campsite. I hadn't been camping since I was a kid. It all just started coming back to me, which was the great thing about this. Is as a child, I went camping all the time. I was going up to Canada every summer. I was going to Algonquin Park and those type of things. And I would go out for 5, 6, 8, 10 days on a canoe with a tent and literally go from lake to lake to lake, from canoe to canoe, and just had the best time. And that just started just to magically come back into my life.
We're not breaking any law, we're just getting water. We're surviving. Alright, hold on, let it.
Bend with your knees, not your back neck.
Alright, my knees aren't so great. Oh, it's gonna snap.
Everybody had a nickname, which reminded me again of this camp, because I had a nickname in camp, which was Lurch, and now my nickname's Shorty. And so it just brings the magic of your childhood back to life in the trails that you see. And the other thing that was great then and is great now, is those hidden nuggets that you find. It's like those places that you think nobody's ever discovered. It's just magic. And there's a great saying that if you're too busy for life, the mountain looks at you. But if you really enjoy it, you look at the mountain. And bike touring slows you down and lets you enjoy the world around you.
In 1988, I took a bike ride across Austria. I was working over there for the summer at a scout camp, and I planned my first bike trip that was going to be a long distance trip. So I took everything on my old Ross bike, very, very little gear. I had a back rack and everything piled on top of it. And I rode, it was about 6 days to go from Salzburg to Vienna. And then I spent a week there and rode back by a different route. And that really gave me the motivation to want to ride again in the US. So I pursued my professional career hopes of being in film by moving to New York and eventually getting a job at Sound One, this film sound mixing studio. So it was a great job for what I was hoping for. It was very entry level, and I was working in the film industry, worked on some films, some big films at the time at a very low assistant level. But after a couple years, it started to feel like it wasn't going to go anywhere. You know, I could go back, move there, and then in between jobs, I could do this bike trip, whatever it was going to be. And so while I was there, I had a lot of downtime in that job. I started to just think about where I would ride. Of course, my first thought was ride across the country, and I looked into that. I had read a lot of books about people who had done cross-country rides. And I thought, well, let me see where all the people that I know live, and, you know, maybe plot it out on a map to see how I could visit people as I rode. But at that time, my family and friends around the country really lived kind of toward the south. My brother lived in Hilton Head, South Carolina. I had a friend in Florida. I had a cousin in Florida. I had some other friends along the way. So since I had that downtime, and this was in the pre-internet age, I started sending away for maps. Adventure Cycling helped tremendously. They had bike routes all planned out. So all of my routes were on back roads. There's this one little town I was really intrigued with called Green Pond. You know, I was imagining what it would be like. And then when I got there, I was looking around for the Green Pond, and there's actually a story there that a shopkeeper told me about how when the train lines used to run through the town, they would always know when they were getting there because they would see this big green pond, which was where the river had changed course and some water had been left over and it turned stagnant. So got my story. But I do not ride to exercise. I ride to explore and see new places. And as such, I always felt like I should just go riding and not worry about what I wore, just wear whatever I was wearing. And that's kind of why when I did my bike trip down to Florida, I didn't really spend any time thinking about the clothing. I just got some shorts together, some t-shirts, headed out. I just really feel like biking should be accessible to anybody. You don't need to dress a particular way. You just put on what you got and go. Maybe it's more comfortable to wear Lycra. I don't know. I never wore it. I just don't feel uncomfortable when I ride. I just ride because that's what I'm wearing, and honestly, I just feel more comfortable overall in the street clothes, in a t-shirt and shorts. I feel more accessible to the people that I might meet along the way. I think, you know, anybody, no matter what you're wearing on a long trip, is gonna get uncomfortable sitting on that seat. It just, you get sore, you gotta move around. I don't think anybody can claim that, you know, they wore these shorts that made the trip feel totally fine. I never hurt at all. I mean, you just get uncomfortable.
How's your trip so far? Tell the crowd.
Puff, puff,
wet.
pass. Puff,
cold.
puff, pass.
A lot of laughs.
Puff, puff, pass.
All good to go?
Yeah, we're good. Fins up.
Nice.
We got Adirondack chairs. Look at that.
Yeah, I headed out on June 7th, 1990. I had that day planned for weeks. I was getting ready. I was riding with my panniers stuffed with heavy things like books just to try to get the feel for it. Looking forward to that day, and then I woke up and it was pouring rain. Oh man, I was so depressed. This is the Bianchi that I rode to Florida and also from Maine back to Pennsylvania, the whole East Coast. Same bike, bought it in 1990. Of course, this wheel is different because the other one failed me about 2 weeks into the trip. Free wheel got cracked. I had these panniers with me. After I left my old company and continued, I was on roads that I had never been on before, and so that's when it started to get exciting, when I realized, like, I've never been on any of these roads before, and everything ahead of me is just gonna be new. I'm really never gonna be on a road I've been on before, so I was excited about that. So yeah, I continued through Amish country, and then I started to notice the clouds coming, and before too long it seemed like it was going to rain. I didn't have any way to get the weather forecast, and so I asked some old men sitting around in some chairs, and they said, oh yeah, big storm coming. And so I thought, oh man, I got to get to this campground before this storm comes, and so I just took off. I was just riding along the river, the Susquehanna River, riding at top speed, and then I could hear the thunder coming, and I could like look behind me, and I even saw some lightning strikes, and I started to get scared, as well I should have, because it was stupid to try to outrun a thunderstorm. One of the cool things that I discovered on this ride was just how people really want to be nice to you. They see you, I guess, as this helpless traveler out on your own, and people just go out of their way to be nice, and it's always so unexpected. And in kind of desperation, I saw a lady sitting on her porch, and I asked her if I could just put my bike under her porch and duck out of the storm for a bit. And she said, well, okay, sure. She seemed a little nervous, as anyone would be. And then it started to pour. And I was out there by myself for a while, and she took some pity on me and said, you want some lemonade? And I said, okay. So she brought me some lemonade, and sitting out there drinking it, and then I noticed a little boy from the house came out, and he was looking at me like, what are you doing on our porch? I said, well, your mom said I could stay here. And he said, what's all that stuff on your bike? And I said, well, that's all my gear. I'm taking a long bike ride. He said, where are you going? I said, to Florida. He said, Florida, wow. And then he was all excited, and his mom said, why don't you come on in the house? So I came in the house, and it continued to thunderstorm outside, and we sat in her little living room, and she brought me more lemonade, and she just talked and told me about her life and her pets. And meanwhile, Rodney was vying for my attention. The little boy's name was Rodney, and he was showing me all his toys, and just excited that I was there. At one point, he brought me a little little rabbit, a tiny little doll rabbit that had fur on it, and said, "Here, this is for you." And I was kind of touched by that, and so I put it on my bike, and it just hung there the entire trip, all the way till Florida. It's like a little good luck charm, I guess. So it was just kind of cool that I had that little memento from my second day of the trip, and it made it all the way to the end, even though Rodney's about 32 years old now. Yeah, I really had a sense that this trip was something I was going to want to remember, and so I made a point of keeping a journal. Every night I would sit and write in the journal in as much detail as I could. I've always felt like I was a writer. Of course, now I am a writer by trade. Back then it was more of a hobby, and so I kept pretty detailed notes about the things that I went through throughout the day, which certainly helped me when I decided to write a book about the experience. I spent a nice night in this town of Plymouth, North Carolina, and met up with a pastor there at a church who let me stay in one of the classrooms, which was really nice. And I had a nice air-conditioned evening in a classroom in a church. So I set out the next morning like usual, singing songs as I rode. I remember a car stopped and asked me what I was doing, and I had a little chat with people as they drove next to me, and they took off. And about 10 minutes later, I felt a snap, and I felt my tire rubbing. And I thought, what the heck just happened? And I jumped off, and here a spoke had broken. And wow, I didn't see that coming. I was ready for flat tires. I wasn't ready for a broken spoke. I had brought some extra spokes, but I guess I kind of thought I'd find a bike shop if this happened. And I was getting into the territory where there weren't a lot of bike shops. Much more rural down there. And so I pulled out my spike tool and I tightened the spokes around it. I brought the wheel back into some true. I went to this bike shop, and it turned out it was a hardware store with some old guy who could fix some bikes. So I trusted this guy to fix my bike and left it with him. And it's normally not too hard to use a freewheel tool to loosen that up and put the new spoke in and be done with it. But this guy's tools didn't fit my Italian touring bike. And he told me afterward that like his tool only would tighten it, it wouldn't loosen it. I didn't think anything of that at the time until I headed out riding again, and suddenly my chain kept moving. My freewheel wouldn't stop. It just kept turning. And what it ended up being was this guy had tightened my freewheel and cracked it. And when I got to the next bike shop in New Bern, North Carolina, the bike shop owner told me that your freewheel's cracked. So he fixed my spokes, no problem, but now I had a cracked freewheel, and it was just getting worse. And he said he didn't have that kind of freewheel, and so my choices were continue riding or go home. And so I continued riding with this cracked freewheel, and I just remember it slowed me down, and the wheels were rubbing. It was like going uphill all the time, even when I was going downhill. And so the days after that, it started to get hotter. My biking was it was so much harder to ride. I just was getting really depressed. So then I saw the church, and I thought, wow, if I could just find a place to set up my tent on that church lawn, that would be ideal. I saw who I took to be the pastor saying goodbye to a family as they took off, and I rolled on up to him and I said, hey, I'm on this bike trip, and I'm coming to the end of a long day. I just rode 80 miles. You think I could just set up a tent on your property here? And the guy, he looked a little suspicious, but he said, well, I guess we have a pavilion over there. Maybe you could set your tent under that. And I had heard in one of the stores that I had passed that it was going to rain that night, and so I thought, all right, well, that could be good under the pavilion. But then he said, well, tell me a little bit about yourself. So I thought, all right, I don't want to talk very long. I'm really tired. I got to eat dinner yet. So, I started telling him about my trip, and he looked at me concerned and heard about my bike ride and that I come from Pennsylvania, and he said, I had a friend once who used to like to ride his bike, and yeah, he liked it a lot like you, and he got killed by a truck one day riding that bike. And I was like, oh, wow, gosh, sorry to hear that. And then he told me another story about when he was a kid and he almost got killed by a car riding his bike. And, I was starting to get the picture. He was telling me that, like, you're not very bright, buddy, taking this bike ride. And, and then he asked me, he said, are you a college boy, Bob? I said, yeah, I went to Penn State. And he's like, I thought so. Only college boys ride their bikes. And he started to perturb me a little bit. He seemed like he was getting really critical. And he's like, what? I gave you a place to stay. You got nothing to worry about. Now I'm going to do you a favor. I'm going to talk to you for the next 2 hours and try to save your soul. And I was like, what did I stumble into here? And yeah, he was a born-again preacher, and he was hell-bent on converting me right then and there. And so I didn't want to spend 2 hours with this guy. I really wanted to make it clear right off the bat that, I'm Catholic, I have my religion, and I'm all set. So I told him that, and right away he went into, I got nothing against Catholics. And then he proceeded to show me how much he did have against Catholics by kind of ridiculing Catholics and whether or not I read the Bible in my daily life. And, he like handed me a Bible and told me to read sections of it. And he just went on and on about how unless you're born again, you're going to hell. And, I have friends who are born again, and that's fine. And if it works for you, that is great. But at that particular time, I did not want to get converted, and I did not want to hear him. But he went on, and no matter what I tried to do to deter him, he was not going to stop. And I tried to be polite. I thought about that pavilion and the rainstorm, and I thought, there's nowhere else to stay. I got to stay and listen to this guy, and so I stayed and listened to him while he went on, and he was screaming and he was yelling and talking about going to hell and how he was got to save my soul. And, after probably 2 hours of this, he actually told me to kneel down and take his hand and commit my life to Christ. And, I told him, I'm just, if I were to do that, it would be fake. I'd be just doing it to stop you from talking, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that. And, well, thankfully he accepted that and shook his head about how he had lost me and I was going to hell, and said, there's the pavilion over there, have a good night. The pavilion had a cement floor. I couldn't put my tent under it anyway. It didn't rain, but it was sweltering hot, and there was a spotlight on me the whole night. I barely slept, and I got up before dawn, and I took off and got the heck out of Sneads Ferry, North Carolina. I rode along the beach, miserable, and then turned inland, and as I crossed over a bridge, I felt a crunch, and my bike just stopped, and I looked at it, and it just wasn't going to go anywhere. It was not pedaling anymore. The back tire was not moving. I could pull the bike along, and that tire just moved very slow, but I was not going to be riding that bike anymore. I was 27 miles short of that bike shop in Wilmington, and I realized I was going to have to try to get a ride. Well, as I remember, I went up to a gas station and started asking people pulling in for gas if I could get a ride to Wilmington, and everyone just said no, no, no. Finally, the gas station owner said he would drive me, but he wasn't going to drive me the whole way. He drove me to an intersection that was still short of Wilmington, and he said, this is as far as I can go. I'm going this way. And so he dropped me at this intersection, and I started just going up to cars every time they would stop at a red light, asking him if I could please get a ride, and nobody was giving me a ride. They just said, sorry, and it just got so frustrating. It got hotter and hotter. I just had this hot water in my water bottles. I was depressed. I just decided right then and there to give up. I just said, whatever happens, this is the end of this trip. This was a failure. I just can't keep going. So I gave up. I stopped asking for rides. I started to walk. And I got, I don't know, half a mile down the road, I saw a complex, an industrial complex, and I thought, you know, there's trucks in there. Maybe I can get a truck driver to give me a ride. And so that's what happened. Very grudgingly, the truck driver said, well, we're going to Wilmington. I could probably throw your bike in the back. And they let me squeeze in the cabin with them, and they drove me that 27 miles into Wilmington, dropped me at the bike shop. And I went in there and, well, I heard once again, we don't have that freewheel. We would have to order it. But at that point, I said, well, what can you do to get me on the road? And they said, well, you can buy a new wheel. And so that's what I did. I bought a new back wheel, and they installed it, and I was able to ride again. And despite having given up an hour before, the feeling of riding again at top speed just like rekindled my enthusiasm. And I thought, all right, I can do a little more. And so I rode a little more. I rode the rest of that day to the campground, and I sat there that night looking at the river that I was camped next to, and I thought, you know what? I think I can do this. I think I can do it with this tire. It's not as durable as my real tire, my other tire, but I think I can do it. And so that I guess started my rebirth on the trip, as I got my enthusiasm back and I started to think about like how cool this was to be out on the road again, and I ended up finishing the trip.
Let's take a ride, just you and I, somewhere we've never been.
To the, you know, the Jesus hanger.
Yes.
And so, you know, you just fold them up and out. But I didn't. I wanted plenty of room for all the gear and you know, the bikes and stuff. So I just put them in my storage locker.
Little bunny poo-poo went to town. He got rained on and busted down. Let's do it, baby.
I can't read.
All right. Whee! She's a pirate.
And I haven't tried it out yet, but I just bought it's like a cabana kind of thing that goes over the hatch.
Okay.
And forms like a
tent
that you anchor, so you can sit, you know,
in here,
out of the rain or out of the sun or wind or whatever.
Where was that yesterday? This morning?
Yesterday, yeah. Well, you know, we wanted to go sit in the back end of my car.
We didn't even make it out of the campground, and guess who gets a flat?
Hi. I haven't had one since MS-150.
No, that's not true. We run the D&L and it blew while we were at the restaurant.
Because I'm running a little low. And we forgot. What are you at 80 or?
Hi, Judy. Hi, everybody. Hey. And this is Philip Seymour Hoffman. Hey. We just made another movie, even though he passed on.
We're doing good.
Doing good.
Couple miles.
Couple miles to go.
Couple miles.
Go get some grub.
I'm back again.
Bad. We got the free upgrade. It was raining again. The rain. Little baby bunk beds, which I'm happy with. Very, very happy with it.
Because it's not a tent and it's dry and we have a heater.
And a heater, and they gave us a heater. By the way, all this was free upgrade.
They felt bad for us.
They did. They felt bad, which is.
Sopping little wet puppies coming.
They saw us come in, and I told her we were running late. I said, "What time do you close?" She said, 8 o'clock. I said, "Oh my God, I hope we make it in time." She goes, "I hope you make it in time too." They wanted to go home.
Oh.
Yeah.
This is awesome. Way to end the night. This is a pleasant surprise.
Oh, but right now I'm gone.
My first experience with fully loaded bicycle touring was kind of a we're all in tour on Vancouver Island. I'd been doing a lot of club rides with the local bicycle club and decided that I wanted to do a tour. So I ordered some racks and panniers, loaded them up, and we did a credit card tour around the southern tip of Vancouver Island. So a couple of friends of mine and I went about 300 miles.
Set up our tent, woke up in the morning, and we were in the middle of a herd of longhorn cattle. Just cows, but longhorn cattle really look intimidating. My wife got out in the morning constitutional, so to speak, saw these cows, screamed, and jumped back into the tent. Didn't know what to do. I got out there, I looked at them, I only hoped they were just plain cows. So I just got out there with a pot and pan and banged it. The cows looked at me like I was an idiot and meandered off. The best thing about fully loaded touring is you don't have to meet somebody at a certain spot. You can go wherever you want. And because of that, you'll see the most amazing sights, meet the most amazing people.
Coming from? Yeah, this was a little loose.
So, Fred, how's it feel to be a showerhead? Refreshing. Without a doubt, one of the greatest trail foods you can have. It's really good.
Are you getting naked in a public place? Oh, God.
But like you said, it doesn't matter. You pack a lot, so you have a lot of weight, and you ride slow. And if you forgot something with the group, somebody always has something that you don't have. And we're such a community that we share. Especially in the morning when you need coffee.
Who's that?
So tell us your bike touring name and how you got it.
Oh my goodness. Somehow I got the name Headwind.
I know how.
It was the first, one of the first days of one of the tours. I was helping to plan the routes. And so we went to the east and the wind was against us. We went to the north, the wind changed, it was coming from the north. Then we went to the south and the wind changed, it was going against us.
That was Tour de Shore, wasn't it?
Yeah. So
Yes.
somehow.
Yeah. Everywhere we went.
At least it seemed.
No,
The
it
wind
was
was
every
all-
direction you went.
But let's tell the whole story, because I always thought he looked like Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yes, you did.
So we started calling him Philip Seymour Headwind. So that's how he got his name.
But my real name is Tom.
Headwind.
Headwind.
Well, I'm Debit, and basically how that transpired is on my first major trip onto the Gap, and I had forgotten to stop to get some cash, basically for the trip. So I tried to hit every single bank that I could, and every single one.
With a gun, right?
Well, not with a gun, just with a debit card.
You might have done better with it.
And each bank, my own bank, decided not to take the card. So we're going on our trip. Every place we go, we can stop. Wawa didn't take it. Nobody took it, right? Finally called them up, and they said, well, guess what? We decided to send you a new card and deactivate your card. We're giving you a new one with a chip. I said, well, great timing, guys. You didn't even call me to tell me. So I had to borrow money, basically, and I put things on a charge. Everybody loaned me cash. Worked out fine, but there it is. Became debit right there on the spot.
What I have to say is this guy makes it happen.
Yeah.
He organizes, he does it all. And the other interesting thing is, as you go along, you go to the campground, he knows the owner, he knows the guy who runs the drugstore over there, he knows the guy who has the diner. He knows everybody. Wherever he goes, he just is like an absorber.
Exactly. It's true.
An absorber. He just knows all the people. And so it's kind of fun.
And that's
It's
not
kinda
by
fun.
it's not by chance. It's because I bring him customers.
Dollar signs.
And people along the route, they all get to know Rob, and it's just been fun.
Well, it is true. I mean, this whole group is because of you. I mean, you're the brainchild behind it all. I mean, I think the three of us came up with the idea. We thought it was a brand new idea of riding a bike in the woods, but you've made this group happen, and you've made the experience what it is.
Well, it's different because there's bicycle tourists all over the country, and but there's different flavors of bicycle tours. We're the only really nut jobs out there.
Cool kids.
The only
we
crazy
are the
ones.
cool kids of bike packing and bicycle touring. We really are. We'll go for 5 miles, stop,
And have a
sit
beer.
down, take pictures, have a beer, and we're like, oh, we should probably go. We got 40 miles to go.
And we do that every 5 miles.
Every 5 miles we stop.
Or are we just lazy?
And it's just, it's about, taking in the scenery and the fresh air and the camaraderie. There's not a lot of talking. We're pretty quiet. when
We
ride.
really are. But
There's no hurry, no
So-
urgency to get anywhere.
Not at all. I've never seen anybody ride a bike, and instead of his water bottle being in the water bottle cage,
It's a bagel.
he's got 2 bagels stuffed in there.
I had a hoagie.
and a hoagie, and I'll look and blink and look again, and there's a bagel missing. I'm like, did you drop a bagel? He goes, nope.
I think it was where
So I'm Shorty. I got involved in bike packing because when we went on our first date, I was trying to impress her, and she was talking about bike packing. I said, oh, I can do that, and then she called me on it. I was like, oh, snap. Now I actually got to go through with it.
And I wanted to sleep in this camping hammock or whatever. But at 3 in the morning, I had to get up and answer the call of nature.
Forgetting
Had
you're
a
in a
hell
hammock?
had a hell of a time getting out of the hammock, and it has a bug net on it, and it's a real nice hammock. But has a bug net on it, and I was able to go out and do my business, come back. The only problem is I was really well tuned at that point. Getting back into the hammock, I managed to get myself into a position in that hammock where I could not get out. I had actually spun myself around, and my face is like this far from the ground. I'm going, really? Did I really do this? And,
You'll have to get one of the bottom entry hammocks.
yeah, I spent a lot of time laughing until I could just, once I stopped laughing and scooted myself around, it took me a good 30 minutes to get out of the hammock anyway.
I got into bike packing and bike touring with the local club where I live, and it kind of progressed from there. I joined the bikepacking.us group with Rob Blanda and started bike packing both with and without my dog, which is awesome, and have continued for quite some years.
But the other thing that's interesting about us is that no matter how many trips we all do together, we never coordinate. We all bring one, everyone's got one can of bug spray, everybody's got one can of,
yes,
of everything.
I
Coffee,
wanna say,
water.
I never bring anything.
I know, he's the
And
only
yet
one.
I've always got whatever I need.
Exactly.
Well, I don't want to be called Mooch, so I
I
feel
was just about to say that.
I got no problem with it.
Absolutely, I love Crocs. I mean, these are appropriate camping hiking shoes. Absolutely.
You can't get rid of Crocs.
How is this, like, for a picture? Is this not the best?
Welcome everyone, and thank you for coming to celebrate the marriage of Crash and Shorty. Or if you came for the food and beer, that's cool too. That's why I'm here. Today we are celebrating two people who have found completion in each other. Given the height difference, I'd say Shorty makes up about 80 to 90% of that completion. Love is an amazing thing, and marriage is a beautiful way of expressing this love. Take it from me, I've been married for over a year now. I've learned a lot in that time. I've learned I can guilt my wife into bringing me breakfast in bed.
I promise to let you draft off me, except for those times I want to look at your butt.
I promise to always protect your back on our long bike rides and entrust you with my gear, to always have your bourbon full and keep cold your beer.
There you go.
With this rubber ring, I be wed. My lovely bride.
And in horrible weather.
Absolutely.
With these rings,
With these rings,
I seal my promise and commitment
I seal my promise and commitment
to be loving and faithful
to be loving and faithful
now and every day of my life.
now and for every day of my life.
By the power vested in me by the best man, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride.
Good luck. Kiss.
You get to kiss me.
Yeah, I was a lot older. I was late 20s.
Okay.
When I gave up smoking, and then I fell out of riding again, and I got back into it in the late 80s. A friend of mine was trying to talk me into riding from our houses in Philadelphia to my parents' place at the Jersey Shore.
Oh, wow.
So instead we signed up for an MS 150 up in Trexlertown.
Okay.
So a kid who grew up riding in flat Philly was riding 75 miles of hills each way.
Oh my goodness.
I'm surprised they kept at it. I wanted to throw my bike in a freaking dumpster.
Yeah, the bike touring thing for me was it was about the traveling. It was about the exploring.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was in college, oh my goodness, it's coming back to me. I had this girlfriend who was up at University of New Hampshire, and I was going to a college in the Boston area, Tufts, and we had split, but we had a little rebound, and I got on my bike and I rode the 70 miles up there to see her. So for me, it was
a hell of a rebound.
It was a couple of weekends. It was fun, but for me, it was freedom. You know, just get out and have the freedom. You know, to move around a little bit.
I don't get the concept of carrying my house on the back of my bike. It's like, you know, and when I get to the other end, the last thing I want to do is rebuild my house.
Actually, I remember, well, you can have a little front pack that's insulated, and you can put your food in there and a couple of beers. So you have your freedom, you know, just move along and stop where, if you come across a campground, or sometimes you find deep woods or whatever, and you can just disappear off the road somehow. But I'll tell you, if it rains, forget it. I do like the cheap motel. You got to go for a cheap motel if there's going to be rain involved. Some of the people who come through, they're finishing up a world tour. Mm-hmm. As a young couple, they've ridden around the world by bicycle with their tents, and they happen to hit the Jersey Shore, and before they get to New York, they're going to fly back to Germany, and they happen to hit my place because I'm one of the host sites there. And unbelievable stories, you know.
Mm-hmm.
We call him the Happy Wanderer because Tom will just, he'll get out in front of you and just wander in a meandering direction and stop at a moment's notice because he wants to take a picture. And he will stop and take a picture, and the rest of us, all you hear is the screeching of brakes behind you. Tom wants to take a picture. Stopping!